Welcome to our next installment in the lecture series for the Principles of Microeconomics course. This one deals with the demand schedule, total revenue, and the price elasticity of demand. In particular, I want you to know that there is a relationship between the demand schedule and total revenue. Namely, that your total revenue varies depending upon where you are on a particular demand curve. So what I have right here is just a table. The left-hand side here, price quantity, is our demand schedule. So this blue highlighted area is the demand schedule. And total revenue is the third column I've added. And total revenue is just P times Q. So you can see here we have a price of 7, a quantity of 1. Our total revenue would be 7. At a price of 6, quantity demanded is 2. Total revenue would be equal to 12. We have 5 times 3, 15, 4 times 4, 16, and so on. So basically we've just modified the demand schedule, this area here, by adding a third column, which is the multiplication of price and quantity to give us total revenue. To take a look at that graphically, this is what it looks like. We have our downward sloping demand curve, so we just inputted the data from the demand schedule. And then we also graphed out total revenue. And you can see graphically that depending upon where you are on the demand curve and your location on the demand curve, total revenue is different. Total revenue starts at 7, raises to 12, raises to 14 at a quantity of 3, reaches a maximum of for total revenue of 16 when quantity is equal to 4. And then once we increase output past that point to 5, we see the total revenue falls. So each incremental increase in output actually decreases total revenue. So this, in mathematics, this is referred to as an inflection point. This is where the slope changes from positive to negative or negative to positive. All right. Well, that point is very important because it corresponds to a point on our demand curve that has a specific value for the price elasticity. At the point where total revenue is a maximum, the absolute value of the price elasticity of demand is equal to 1. Now the reason I put absolute value on there is that if we think about the demand curve, it's a representation between price and quantity. With demand, that's always negative. So for the price elasticity of demand, we're always going to get a negative number. So that's one of the reasons why we place an absolute value around it, because we know it's going to be negative, so we can ignore that fact. So make sure you remember that where total revenue is at a maximum, the price elasticity of demand is equal to 1. With total revenue varying along the demand curve, the price elasticity varies along the demand curve. Depending on what point you are located on a demand curve, you are going to have a different price elasticity of demand. All right. Now, the one way to take a look at this is our ideal point. We want to get to the point where total revenue is at a maximum. So if we're at a quantity greater than 4, what do we need in order to maximize our total revenue? We know that if we move from this point on the demand curve to this point, we will be increasing our total revenue, but we raised our price in the process. So an increase in the price in this region, where quantity is greater than 4 in this example, increasing the price there will increase total revenue. The opposite is true for quantities to the left of this point. For quantities 1, 2, and 3, if we're at, for example, this point right here, at 5, a price of 5 and a quantity of 3, in order to get to this point where revenue is maximized, we have to lower the price. So in the region to the left of where the price elasticity of demand is equal to 1, the left portion of that demand curve, a decrease in price decreases total revenue. Well, what does that mean? It tells us what the values of the price elasticity of demand are going to be in each of these areas. So let me copy this one and move it over here. And I can tell you that in this region, the price elasticity of demand is less than 1. Remember, the price elasticity of demand is the percent change in the quantity divided by the percent change in the price. That tells me that the impact of the increase in price in this region outweighs the decrease in the quantities that are being sold. So we are raising the price by an amount, let's say 10%, but quantity is going to fall by less than 10%. That will cause total revenue to rise. So in this region to the right of on the demand curve, from the point where price elasticity of demand is equal to 1, the price elasticity of demand is equal to less than 1. And if we take a look at the region on the left, we will see that the opposite is the case, that the price elasticity of demand is greater than 1. The reason being, realize that if we're at this point here of 5 and 3 and we move to 4 and 4, lowering the price increases total revenue. That means that the decrease in price is being completely counteracted by the increase in the quantity. So this means the numerator of the price elasticity of demand equation is greater than the denominator. So the increase in the quantity sold outweighs the losses in revenue due to the increase in the price. So make sure that you remember that. It's an important thing in economics to know, number one, that total revenue varies depending on where you're at on a particular demand curve. All right, so where you are on a demand curve and changing that location will change your total revenue. There's a relationship between total revenue and demand. Also realize that on any demand curve, particularly since we're doing this simply and assuming that this is a linear demand curve, we are going to have a point where total revenue is maximized. There's a point on the demand curve where total revenue is maximized. Price elasticity of demand is exactly equal to, or the absolute value of the price elasticity of demand is exactly equal to 1 at that point. Realize that if you're to the left of that point, at lower quantities, the price elasticity of demand is greater than 1, and if you're to the right of that point, in this region here, the price elasticity of demand is less than 1. So make sure that you remember that. This is not only for the course, but in business, it's important to remember this, that your demand curve determines your total revenue, and that if you have information about what the price elasticity of demand is for a particular product, particularly your product, that gives you information on how to price the item in order to maximize revenues. I hope this was of some help. If you still have difficulty with the relationship between demand, total revenue, and the price elasticity of demand, be sure to stop by my office hours. As always, they are on Mondays between the hours of 4 and 6, right before class. If that's not convenient for you, be sure to contact me, and I will make arrangements for special office hours.